Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode of HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we're joined by Jeff Hayden, who is a keynote speaker, ghostwriter, LinkedIn influencer, and contributing editor to the Inc. magazine, and also author of The Motivation Myth: How High Achievers Really Set Themselves Up to Win. Jeff, welcome back to the show. How have you been?
I'm great, Chris. How about you?
Not too bad. I said to you before the show, I think the main difference is I'm a dad now. So big change.
I'm a grandpa, so I'm at the other end of that spectrum.
Yeah, I'm not there just yet. So what have you been up to since we last spoke?
I guess the most recent thing is I spoke at a TEDx conference in Palo Alto, which was cool, intimidating, cool, kind of weird. It's a whole different deal from a normal speaking gig where you go and you know you're doing your stuff and the audience is there. There's a formality and a structure and a flow to it that kind of scared me a little bit, to be honest with you. I'm not that formal, and there is an expectation of more formal. And I mean, there's even like this little shag rug circle that they make you stand on and they don't want you to move from
because of the camera angles and the mic.
And I understand it. I'm not complaining or criticizing. It was just very, very different.
Well, can't you walk around the stage? You can't walk around the stage? No,
they don't want you to move.
Well, so you just got to move with your hands, and because I find it really hard to talk without moving and walking and being in motion. You know, that's yeah.
That was hard, and because the production values are really high, the lights are incredibly bright. So you can see vaguely the first row, the fact that there are people there, but there's no expressions, no feedback. So unless you can make people laugh, you're speaking to lights. So that was kind of interesting too, but I really enjoyed it and met some really cool people. And probably the best thing that happened out of it, so I'd happened to be talking to Duff McKagan, the bass player for Guns N' Roses. I was interviewing because he has a solo album coming out, and I just mentioned that we were talking about confidence and the ability to go on stage in front of thousands and thousands of people, and how this is going to be a long story, so work with me. You know, if you go out with Guns N' Roses, you know, even if there's 50,000 people out there, you've got this giant machine around you because, you know, you've got Axl and you've got Slash and you've got the production, you've got all that stuff. And so I would have to think that there's some confidence that comes from that because you are part of this big machine and everybody in the audience knows your songs, loves your songs. You know, It's a pretty good spot to be in. As opposed to he has a solo album coming out and a lot of it's acoustic. And so he's going to smaller clubs and it's him and a couple guys in a band and the audience isn't expecting this. And so that has to be a little nerve-wracking even for a guy like that because you're putting yourself.
Yeah, it's the unknown, right?
Yeah. So we were talking about that and I said, you know, I'm doing this TEDx thing and I'm pretty nervous about it, which I usually don't get nervous. It was really cool because he said, and I think this applies to a lot of stuff. He said, just remember, everybody there wants to see you succeed. They want to see you kick ass because they want to be entertained. They want to be informed. They want you to do well because that's a better experience for them. So they're on your side. And, you know, if you speak somewhere, or if it's just you're going to a job interview, you're nervous because you're afraid the person won't like you. They're going to be critical of you. They're going to find all the things that are wrong with you and why you're not the right fit for the job. But actually that person wants you to be the perfect candidate. They are for you to meet all of their needs because that's what they want. And if you approach it that way and say, wow, they want me to kick ass, that actually is a really cool thought. And so I used that. It's nice that he sent me a note right beforehand and said, you know, you got this, go kick ass. That was kind of cool. You know, not often do I get a rock star to send me something like that.
Well, it kind of goes back to the topic of today's show, which is surrounding your book. But a lot of the winners that I speak to, they actually have that mindset where they assume they're going to win and they assume it is going to go well. And it's just built. They don't see the negative. But most of us, we worry. We think something's going to go wrong. I know, especially when I'm speaking and delivering our own keynotes at our own workshops, I'm terrified every single time, even though I've done it a million times before. Why is that? Why are we programmed to always think the negative as opposed to the positive outcomes?
Because we're people, I suppose. What's also interesting about what you just said is I don't have the study like in front of me, but I saw a research project where there's a correlation between if you meet somebody new and if you believe that they are going to like you, there is a huge correlation between that belief and the fact that they actually will. It's like a self-fulfilling
Really?
in a way. And I wish I had it right in front of me, but it's called the self-fulfilling prophecy of self-belief or something to that effect. But it's like if you walk in and say, you know what, they're going to like me. If you could just fool yourself into thinking that, which I would have to do. But if you can go in saying they're going to like me, then they are much more likely to. If for no other reason, then it frees you up to be yourself. Being this artificial, hi, how are you? Hopefully I'll say the right things. I've thought of a couple small topics that I can use. If you just go and be yourself and think that people will like you, they typically do.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting premise, but I think we're worried more about failure than we are excited about success. Because if you're me, you think you're supposed to succeed. It's not an ego thing, but that's what I'm supposed to do. So then if I do succeed, well, that to me is neutral. But
with you.
I fail all day long. And that's what I'm worried about. So I'm not excited if I succeed, but I am disappointed if I fail. I have always assumed that I am supposed to, not because I'm who I am. So look, hopefully this doesn't come across wrong. I'm not saying that I'm supposed to succeed because I'm this wonderful person. I'm saying I think success is what you are supposed to do. That's what people should do. And so I'm assuming I should succeed. And if I don't, well, then I suck. And so
you have to assume before you can achieve. Like if you don't believe in the fact that you're going to succeed, then you definitely will fail. Without a shadow of a doubt. It kind of has to start there at the very, and it's not you being arrogant. That's just, I feel like that's just a requirement for success, is that you believe in what you're doing.
Like I get to talk to lots of like athletes, for instance, and I'll say, what drives you more, the desire to win or the not wanting to lose? And 80% of them say winning is great, but it goes away within about 5 minutes because that's what I'm supposed to do. But I hate to lose. So I think there is that mindset of success is kind of what you're supposed to do. Especially if you're working really hard and you're trying hard and you've put a lot into it, you're assuming that's the outcome, but you hate to lose. So I've talked to guys like Jimmy Johnson. He's a NASCAR driver and he's won the championship 7 times. He's a legend in the sport. Winning, he says he's excited for about a minute, but every time he loses, it just kills him.
I have a question from LinkedIn. It's from Will Cortez. He said, Jeff, I agree that it all starts with a mindset of success and abundance. Assuming that happens and you have that, what should be your next 3 to 5 key actions?
I'm really big on, and you and I have talked about this before, I'm big on the idea of serial achievement. And the premise of that is that we all have lots of goals. And it's tempting to try to work on all of them at once, which means that you really never accomplish any of them because you can't focus well enough and you don't have enough time. To me, it's you have something you really want to accomplish, you work hard at it, you get there, and then you take a look and say, okay, is there more that I can do with this? Is there somewhere else I want to take this? Is that something I'm excited about? And if it's not, then some of those other things that you've had in the back of your mind where like, hey, I really want to do that someday, then I think it's time to shift to that. And it's okay to let go of whatever you had worked on before because you still carry all the things with you that you learned. And most importantly, you carry with you the idea of, I know how to follow processes. I know how to stay with it. I know how to learn. I know how to grow. I know how to gain skill. That's a skill in and of itself that you can apply to all sorts of different things. So to me, it's bask in the glow for a minute and then think, okay, what do I want to do with this? And if there's not something else to it that's super exciting, then you kind of go to something else. A great example who no one in your audience will know, well, they might. He's an American broadcaster, but there's a guy, Tony Kornheiser, who wrote for the Washington Post for years, sports writer, top guy in the country. decided to do some TV. Now he's on a show called PTI. It's Pardon the Interruption, but it's been on ESPN for like 13 years. And he's one of the leading lights of that. And he basically just shifted and said, I don't want to write anymore, but I really want to express myself in this other medium. That's a whole career shift. It's a whole new thing to try to succeed at, but he brought all those skills with him. And so it's okay to say, I've gotten what I can get out of this. Where do I want to go now? Another thing that people miss out, you don't have to have the motivation before you start, because the process of starting and improving makes you feel good about yourself. And that's a fun feeling, and that will motivate you to keep going.
Yeah, that's where I get addicted with things. You're like, that's where the addiction comes to me, is that I get more and more, and the more I progress, the more motivated I get, the more excited I get in it. And then but you have to be willing to know at the beginning that it is going to suck sometimes, and it is going to be difficult, and you aren't going to be motivated from the very beginning. But when you start doing it and you start seeing results, then that's where the motivation comes.
Well, and that's my 2-week rule, which is if you think you want to do something, find or create a process that will allow you to at least improve and to get better at it. And then promise yourself that for 2 weeks, that's what you're going to do. Because you're not going to improve the first day or the second day or the third day. But by the end of 2 weeks, if you've been giving it a good go, you will be better, and you'll realize that, okay, this is working. And you'll have some of that fulfillment and happiness that comes from improving, and you can roll on. And you can do anything for 2 weeks. And if you can't commit to the 2 weeks, then it's probably not something that you're interested in doing in the first place. And so find something that you can decide that I will give this 2 weeks.
That's a really great rule for everyone listening, and it's very achievable. And I do get frustrated sometimes when I ask someone, when someone says, oh, I'm not good at that. And I'm like, how long did you try it for? Oh, I tried it once. But, well, you tried it once. Of course you're not good at it.
The problem is that it's a very popular thing to assume that there is a way to hack your way to success, that there is this secret shortcut that if you just find it, then you skip all the hard work. And maybe that's true in very small, isolated things, but anything that requires anything worthwhile that you're trying to do, you're going to be terrible at first. Because if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So I know that's a cliche, but it's true. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So actually, the fact that it's hard is something you can get excited about, because that means that if you're willing to put in the work, you can do things that most other people will not be able to do. Once you have done that once, let's say you're trying to do something that's public. So you have to, in front of a lot of people, fail. I don't know, let's say you get into cycling and you want to go on group rides, but you've never ridden very much. Well, you're going to ride with a bunch of people and you're going to be the weakest and the slowest, and you're going to feel terrible, and that's no fun. But if you have done something hard and achieved something in some other pursuit, you bring that confidence of, okay, well, I may not be good at cycling now, but I'm really good at that. And I don't have to tell people I'm good at that, but I know I'm good at that. And I know that I will get there. And that makes it much easier to be out in public and be kind of naked and exposed, because nobody's good at everything. But if you got a few things you're good at and you go into that new field, it's like, okay,
yeah,
I'm gonna be okay here.
That's exactly how I feel at the moment, Jeff. I just started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I just started training, and I'm getting beaten up by everyone. There's people that are half my weight that are just tapping me out on the mat, and I'm just terrible. But I know that that's normal. And I walked into the gym, and I knew I was going to be the worst person in there, and I still am. I've only been doing it for a few months now, and I'm willing to go through that. And it is the confidence of being at that position in other things in my life and other sports that I know that's normal. And after every single role, sort of the training, I'm asking every partner that I have, what could I have done better? Even
if you weren't doing that to learn, that's a smart technique when you feel insecure and when you feel like, wow, I'm the worst person at this. If you own it, and if you just start talking to people and say, wow, I'm not doing well at this. Can you help me? Can you give me? If they were thinking badly of you, that all goes away. Because you just want to learn, and you're showing that you respect them by saying, can you give me some input? Can you give me some feedback? And it takes away all that insecurity that you should have, and you immediately become part of the group because you want to be part of the group. And so that's always good advice. If you're doing something new, just own it and ask people for help. And almost invariably, they will help you, they'll support you. And if nothing else, because they remember when they were new and they wish somebody would help them.
By the way, to your point, I did that on purpose. So the reason I approached it after each session and asked everyone for their feedback, in my mind, I now have 20 new coaches.
Yes.
Right. And every time I went, because from day one, that's how the relationship, I kicked it off. They then constantly give me advice now. Yep. I'm not even asking them. They're like, "Oh, this is what you did wrong, Chris." And these are people that are white belts. These are people that also have just started, but now they're gaining more confidence because they're now coaching me as well. Could you talk about the relationship between happiness and success?
I would say that if you think success will make you happy, like achieving something big, whatever it may be, if you think that will make you happy, then you are wrong. Because it's like the new house syndrome, where you buy a bigger house and it feels good for about a month, and then all of a sudden it's the same old house, or the new car, or the whatever it is.
Promotion.
There's studies that show that people actually get more happiness out of planning a vacation than they do actually taking the vacation. Because the anticipatory side of it is a lot of fun. So if you think that the success part will make you happy, then it will not. If you find ways that the process and the journey gives you small doses of fulfillment and happiness, it can be as simple as if you are trying to run a marathon, and if today you have to go out and run 5 miles, and if you run that 5 miles, you get to feel good about yourself because you did what you set out to do that day. And that should make you happy. And so if you can find ways that the process makes you happy, then there is a link between success and happiness, I think. Since you've made fun of me for having famous friends, I'll throw another one out there. Like I was talking to Kirk Hammett, the Metallica guitarist, and I said, you guys are like 40 years into this, 100 and some million albums, you still go and sell out 50,000 seat arenas and stuff. How do you do that? And he said, and it seems fun. And he said, but why? He said, my goal was to be good enough that I could play music with my friends. And that's still how I look at it. And he said, I get to play music with the 3 people that I most want to be with on stage, and I get to go do that. And he said, don't get me wrong, all the rock star stuff and the money and all that other stuff is great, but that's really my goal. And so he said, if we were just doing little small clubs, I would still be happy because I get to do what I set out to do. So that's a long-winded way of me saying that if the end result is the only thing that you want to pin your happiness on, then it will end up feeling hollow because it can't do that. But if the process is what you want and the end result is a byproduct of that, and no matter how positive, then you're good to go. If you think about it, say you're worth $1 billion. All right, well, you don't need more money. And yet there are people that still chase more. Mm-hmm. They're chasing more because they enjoy the process of building companies or invest, whatever it is that they do. If that's fun, then they probably feel successful and they're kind of happy. If it's just, wow, I've got to get to 5 billion because I won't be happy unless I am, then it's a goal that you're chasing that you're probably never going to get to that makes you happy.
Yeah. Well, on that point then, do you need to find your passion in order to be happy?
I think you can develop passions. Like the idea that you've got to sit around and wait until you figure out what it is you are meant to do means you will probably wait forever. But if we go back to like you talking about, it gets addictive when you get better at something. And it's like, wow, I've gotten to this point and I want to get even better and I want to learn this and I want to learn that. You can create a passion out of something by improving and diving into it. And you can realize that, wow, I really like to do that. I didn't want to like cycling. I really like cycling. I didn't want to be on the bike for the first 3 weeks or so. I hated it. I thought it was stupid, but I was in bad shape and couldn't run because my knees were bad. And I just wanted a cardio outlet. But as time went by, I got better at it, which made it help. But I learned more about sport. I met people. I did stuff. And so it became a passion. And I think you can learn to like a lot of different things if you give yourself enough time to get better at it. And so, and then to finish on that, and you don't have to assume that your passion is something you will do for the next 45 years of your life. You can still go back to the serial achiever thing and say, okay, I'm passionate about this right now, but when that dwindles, that's okay. I'm going to find something else that I really enjoy. And you might try a few things and you give it a really good go and you realize after a few months, I like this, but I don't like it that well. And that's okay too. and you go on to do something else. So I think life is a series of chunks where you focus on certain things and you achieve certain things, and there are stages to life. And as long as what you are doing leaves you at the end of the day feeling fulfilled and like you're making progress towards something that's important to you, then that's all that matters. You've got a kid now, so your goal, I'm sure, is for her to be happy, smart, independent, willing, ready to launch out onto her own life and find her own happiness and stuff. And so on an everyday basis, it's kind of hard to see that. Or if every day you end the day thinking, you know what, we did our best today and we're being good parents and we're giving it a really good go and we're trying to get to that other place, then you get to feel good about what you're doing.
Yeah. And Rita made a good point in the chat, in the LinkedIn chat. She said it also helps if you help someone else find happiness and lift someone else up, it's a sure way to become happy yourself. Do you agree with that?
There's a really good quote from, I think it's John Wooden, who's an old basketball coach from UCLA years ago, who said that a great leader is a person who has decided that his or her happiness comes from the happiness and success of other people.
I had another question here. One quick question. In this context, what is the importance of being within the comfort zone and being a champion, or going out of the comfort zone and starting a new journey altogether from scratch?
The old cliche is that you can't grow unless you're uncomfortable, basically.
Yeah, that's where the growth comes.
Yeah, and I do think that's true. Whether you need to do something completely different or not, I think wow, that's a hard question to answer, and it depends on your situation.
Right? Yeah. So maybe it depends on what you're trying to achieve, though.
Well, here, I'll give you a framework then. Take a look at whatever you're currently doing. Hopefully you're doing it because you wanted to be there and you think that there is some outcome that you're going for. But take a step back and examine the approach that you are using to achieving what you're trying to achieve. Are you doing what you actually need to do, or are you doing what you think you should do and want to do, or what feels good or what feels comfortable? So take a step back and say, okay, other people that have done this, what do they do? And am I willing to do those things? Because in most cases, there are perfectly good wheels out there you don't need to reinvent. So, and if you're not willing to do those things, then you're probably not going to succeed. And so then it may make sense to say, okay, what's a different avenue I want to go that I am willing to do what it takes to get to where I need to get? I think that's probably the first start. But in most cases, the hardest thing to do, I think, is to find a process or to embrace a process that doesn't necessarily feel good, but that you do know will work. You know, like if you want to run a marathon, you can't just go to the gym and run the treadmill every couple of days a week. Even though that feels good, it's not going to happen. And if you're not willing to go do that, you're not going to get there. If you're not willing to suffer through learning how to edit like you did, if you're not willing to follow that process, then you're never going to get there. And so your way, I think people get really hung up on the idea that they're individuals, which we are, and that they're unique, which we are. And so therefore my process has to be unique and special to me. And it really does. 99%.
I copy everyone's processes.
is already out there, and if you follow that. And the only reason to vary is after you've gone a long way through and realize that, okay, I do see a couple tweaks based on data and results that I can make that would make this a little bit better for me. But that's not the case in the very beginning. It is never the case in the beginning. Figure out where you want to go, decide if what you're doing is actually going to get you there or not. And it probably isn't, or you'd be farther along the path and you wouldn't be asking this question. And then if you're not willing to do that, figure out something else that you are willing to, quote unquote, pay the price in order to achieve.
Suresh said, to follow up, thanks for that, Jeff, by the way. Suresh followed up and said, but is that the right thought process of taking a risk in terms of decision making?
The real decision on risk is not necessarily what happens if you fail, because I think most people can overcome. There are very few failures that you can't overcome in time, but the real risk is that you are going to do something, but you have not decided that you will do whatever it takes to make sure that the risk gets overcome. And which means usually just means lots and lots of effort. So if you're going to go off on a risky path, but you're only going to give it half the effort, maybe, then yeah, that's a really huge risk. If you're going to say, you know what, this will probably go badly for a while, but I'm going to keep chugging and working. I will outwork everyone in the room, and I will outwork everyone around me, and I will do all that. Then that does minimize your risk to some degree. Still doesn't guarantee success, but it comes much closer than giving it a halfway approach.
For me as well, we're talking about the uncomfortable thing, and we just had a message. I think it's Jax. Jax Wiley. Sorry if I've pronounced your first name wrong. From that point of view, I agree. You have to go towards uncomfortable to achieve. Personally, that's always worked for me. Whenever most of the success I've had comes in that uncomfortable zone.
Actually, that's a really good point. First of all, I think being uncomfortable is a habit that you can develop, and it gets easier. So it's not like it's terrible all the time. If you stay in a comfort zone most of the time and you stray into the discomfort area, it feels horrible at first, but do it enough and it isn't really a big deal. But then the other part of it is you will fail a ton, but you get used to that too. And it's like, you know what? Failure isn't really
failure. It's learning.
It isn't that big of a thing. It's not ego crushing. It doesn't change my life. It's not devastating. It's just, okay, that didn't go so well. What do I do so next time maybe it goes better? And so I'm not proposing the whole, fail fast, fail often, whatever thing, because I hope everything that you try to do, you are trying to do so that you succeed.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But sometimes it won't work out. And over time you realize that that's not a big deal. And the biggest thing is nobody around you is looking at you and thinking, oh my gosh, what a failure. They don't care.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm so happy you said that, because people are always so worried about what other people think, and they're not looking at you. No one cares. When I was setting up this company or thinking about this, was like a 3-year process of building up the courage to quit my job and start this business. I realized that it wasn't that I wasn't confident in my skill set in order to be able to generate revenue in this company, because I've been doing that for someone else for 13 years. It was in the failure of, what are my parents going to think if I fail? We kind of build it up in our mind, right? We think that everyone's looking at us, and
everybody's looking at us, and nobody is looking.
No one cares. Maybe it's like an egotistical Last question I'll ask you. When you've interviewed some obviously very highly successful people, right?
I can some names if you want.
Yeah, I got some more names in there. What was the most common trait that came up that they shared when during those interviews that you did?
I'm going to answer it my way. I'm going to be a politician, and I'm going to answer the question you asked my way instead of directly. But I think what's common from all of those is that it's really easy to see someone that's really successful in whatever field it may be, and think that they have some special inborn talent or intelligence, or they have special connections, or they had access to money, or there's something they have that the rest of us don't. And that's how they got there. And I always walk away thinking, and I mean this in a good way, this person has worked really hard to be incredible at whatever it is, but other than that, they're just a person, and they're just like us, and they've got the same goofy traits, and they've got the same foibles and
insecurities.
Half the time their life is a mess, and they're insecure and they're anxious, and they've got all that stuff. They've just worked really hard for a long time at something that they wanted to do, and so I guess it's ordinary people who have put in the time and effort to be able to do extraordinary things. And if you think about it that way, that's incredibly empowering, because they don't have something special. I mean, there's musicians I've talked to that if they weren't rock stars, they are unemployable. And I mean that, and they could not.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah,
they could not work for anyone. They couldn't get along. It just wouldn't work. Fortunately, this is what they do, but their lives aren't all perfectly together. They just worked really hard at something to do the rest of us see as extraordinary. And that means that if you're willing to do that, you can do the same thing. But the key is to take a step back and decide what success means to you. Because success doesn't have to mean money or job titles or houses or whatever else it is. However you choose to define success, because it is a choice, that's what you should pursue. And that's what you should be happy with. And if you quit comparing yourself to other people and just say, let me compare myself to what my idea of success is, and then I'm going to work to get there, That's the deal. And that goes back to what you said about there's lots of successful people that aren't happy. They chose a definition of success that really wasn't fulfilling. And yet they've accomplished it, but it wasn't fulfilling. So
Yeah.
People that teach high school that make teachers are underpaid. We all know that. So they're making what people in other industries are, but they're happy as they can be, because what they really like to do is make a difference in kids' lives and watch them grow into something that they were not. And that leaves them feeling fulfilled. And if that's your definition of happiness and success, then you're there. You really have to take a step back and define success. But then once you do, realize that the people that have achieved their own definitions don't have anything that you don't have. They just put in the time and the effort, and they focused on getting to where they wanted to be.
Well, look, Jeff, I'm gonna have to wrap up, but this has been amazing as always. Always love our conversations, and well, look, if you're not already following, you're probably all following Jeff already, but if you're not already following, make sure you follow him here on LinkedIn as well, and also your Inc. magazine, right? You're publishing on there. How often do you publish on there, Jeff?
Pretty much 5 days a week.
Really? Wow. Okay. There you go. Go over to Inc. magazine. You can follow Jeff's articles there. Do you share those on LinkedIn as well, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, so we can just follow you on LinkedIn to make things easier.
Yeah.
Apart from that, guys, have a great day. We'll see you all on the next live show. Jeff, I'll be seeing you soon. As I said, I'll be coming out to your neck of the woods soon, so hopefully I get to see you and your beachfront view, right? It always makes me jealous. I remember last time on our podcast, you showed me the beach outside front of your house, if I remember correctly. So
yes, sir.
Definitely got to come see that in person.
Please do.
No problem. See you later, guys, and I'll see you all next week. Bye.